Hey, it's Mackenzi Lee here again to bring you more recommendations from my bookstore to your bookshelves. So hi, I haven't seen you in a long time. I've been super busy. I had a book come out and I've been traveling all over promoting it, and I did some festivals, and I also went on a super epic vacation, and between all of that I just didn't have time to sit down and record a video. So I'm not great at reading while I'm traveling, but I have discovered the best way for me to get books read while I'm on the road is audiobooks. So I'm gonna give you a very short crash course in audiobooks if you want to get started but don't know where to start. Then I'm gonna recommend to you 3 audiobooks that I read while I was on the road and super duper loved. So the first place you can go is Audible. Audible has all the audiobooks, and they're super convenient. The way I listen to audiobooks is through a company called Libro.fm. It's basically Audible for local independent bookstores. And as someone who works at an independent bookstore, who is all about putting money back into your local bookstores, I am all about Libro.fm. So if you don't feel like you have money to buy audiobooks, because let's be honest, they are expensive and they are an investment, you can use your local library. You can actually go into your library, talk to your librarian about this, and they can either send you to the audiobook section, or you can use Overdrive, which is basically how you can check out audiobooks through your library, but you do it all through your computer or your phone. So that's a really easy thing to do if your library is part of Overdrive, and also if you have a public library card. And if you don't have a public library card, this would be a perfect excuse to go get one. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 audiobooks that I listened to while I was on the road that I really, really loved. So my first audiobook recommendation is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I read this book as a galley a long time ago, and it was fine. I really liked it. Then I got the audiobook through Libro.fm. The audiobook is read by Elizabeth Acevedo, who's the author, and she is a slam poet and a performer, and oh my gosh, I became obsessed with this book because of how good the audiobook is. Her performance is so emotional and so real, and it's like, this is the way this poetry feels like it's supposed to be experienced, is by being heard instead of read. And so this went from a book I really liked to a book I really, really, really loved when I listened to the audiobook. So The Poet X is about a girl named Xiomara who's growing up with her twin brother in Harlem. They're living with their very strict, very religious immigrant parents who have a lot of expectations for exactly what their kids should be, and neither Xiomara nor her twin brother really, really fit this mold. So Xiomara is struggling with managing sort of who she is versus who her parents want her to be, trying to figure out how to balance those two things, and also falling in love with a boy, and also learning about poetry and starting to write poetry, and becoming a slam poet, and learning how to perform and be artistic and things like that. And it's just it's so good. I just really, really love this book. I really love the audiobook though. Please listen to the audiobook of this because the author, Elizabeth Acevedo, really performs it. And I love a good performed audiobook. So that's The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. My second recommendation, a book I listened to and really, really loved while I was on the road, is Allegedly by Tiffany Jackson, read by Bonnie Turpin. So Bonnie Turpin just won the Odyssey Award for narrating The Hate U Give, and she is fantastic. She's such a good narrator. And honestly, guys, when you're listening to audiobooks, this seems like a dumb statement, but narrators make all the difference. So if you don't like a book when you're listening to it, consider maybe it's the narrator you don't like and not the book, because it can be really hard to separate them, and that can be a tough thing about listening to audiobooks. But Bonnie Turpin does such a good job with this book. Allegedly is sort of a true crime-ish. It's not actually true, but it's based on a true crime. It's sort of a thriller, but also kind of a mystery. It's about a girl named Mary Addison who, when she was 12 years old, was arrested and accused of allegedly killing a baby. And it's a really dark book. So she's been growing up in the system, she's living in a group home, and she's about to age out of the system and is starting to confront the truth about what happened the night she was arrested, and also how her relationship with her mother is going to operate going forward, because her mother is a large part of why she was arrested and has been sort of quiet about what actually happened. It's very tense, it's very dark, it's very atmospheric, and it's very I've been on a true crime kick between listening to audiobooks. I was listening to My Favorite Murder, which is a true crime podcast, and so this book fit in really, really well, and basically it's just so tense. That was the thing about it, and it has this driving question throughout the whole book of what actually happened on the night the baby died. And even when they're just sitting eating lunch, I was okay, gotta know, this question is driving me through this whole book. And Bonnie Turpin, who's the narrator, is such a good narrator. So that's Allegedly by Tiffany Jackson, read by Bonnie Turpin. My last recommendation for a really great audiobook I listened to is Dreamland Burning by Jennifer Latham. It's narrated by two narrators. It's Nick Slattery and Pieng Threadgill. Dreamland Burning is about the Tulsa, Oklahoma race riots in the turn of the century, which was a historical event I did not know anything about until I started reading this book. This book is told in dual narration. Part of it is in the turn of the century, part of it is in the modern day. They're both set in Tulsa. The modern day is about a young woman who is slowly uncovering the truth about these race riots in the turn of the century that she doesn't know that much about, and also sort of coming to terms with her identity as a biracial woman in Tulsa, where these horrible race riots happened and where there's been all this racial tension, and also just like being a young black woman in America. And the other plot line is about a young man who is living through the race riots, learning to confront his own prejudice, learning to confront his own privilege, and also sort of figuring out where he's going to take a stand in the world and where he's going to take a stand against his family and against his community and things like that. This book is so good. It's really, really good historical fiction, but also has this great like present narrative. If you're scared of historical fiction, this is a good one to sort of dip into because there's the two narratives to balance each other out. So I have a hard time with dual narrative books, not gonna lie, because there always ends up being one narrative that I am more invested in than the other. This one was not the case. Every time one section would end, I would be like, okay, well, I want to know what happens to this person, but then the next section would start with the other narrator. It's like, oh no, wait, I was super into this one too. So both narrators are really, really good. I really especially liked Luke Slattery, who reads the past narrative. Like, it's definitely due to the writing and the narrator working in harmony, but it feels very old and it feels very authentic to the time period, but still really, really accessible. So that's Dreamland Burning by Jennifer Latham, read by Luke Slattery and Pieng Threadgill. Okay, those are some of my favorite audiobook recommendations from this past month. Let me know in comments if you have any audiobooks that you really love, or if you need recommendations, or if you need help figuring out what kind of audiobook is the right kind of audiobook for you. As always, don't forget to subscribe to Epic Reads. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Mackenzi Lee, and I'll see you next time.